So I had this rush of energy going up and down my body. And as my third eye and my crown opened, it was like my spirit shot out of my body and went into the space of eternity.
Today, we're talking with the spiritual powerhouse, Betty Guadagno. Welcome in, Betty. So nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for this space, Kimberly. So grateful for you.
Oh, I have goosebumps. We were talking about that before we got on camera. I could describe your experience as a near-death experience, but that is just such a tiny part of what happened with you and what you're doing here on the planet. So take it away, Betty. Tell us what your life was like before you started on this journey and bring us up to where you are today.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for this space. And I'm always so grateful when I get a chance to share about my human experience, my spiritual experience, because it reminds me. There's a lot of times in my life now going forward. I had my spiritual experience a little less than 5 years ago. But even since my experience, I forget sometimes that like I have had a miraculous things happen to me and that I'm not a human. I'm a spirit having a human experience. And so every time that I get an opportunity to share my experience, I'm reminded that life is not what I think it is. It's much bigger, it's much vaster, and that there's a purpose for everything. And so I appreciate conscious space. And I really appreciate people who create conscious space. I also create conscious space in my life. And so I'm very grateful. Let me get into this story, and I'll tell you a little bit of background because it leads up into a very inspiring transformation. But I grew up in a lot of chaos and dysfunction. I experienced every sort of trauma that a person could at a very young age. Sexual trauma, emotional trauma, physical trauma. I grew up in a family that were completely unaware. And so my family utilized tools like drug addiction, incest, like molestation, crazy dense experiences. And that's how I grew up. I grew up really impoverished. And I thought that all of those things were very normal. I didn't realize that other people weren't having these experiences. I thought that everybody was having these experiences because that's what I was exposed to. And my parents were both addicts, and it was just part of our family line. And in 2007, my parents made a decision that they were done with their addiction. They were tired of being poor. They were tired of being hungry. They were tired of suffering. And so they were going to change their lives. They were going to end their suffering. And the only way that they knew how to do that was to die. And so in 2007, my parents committed suicide together. I was 23 when that happened, and my sister was 18. And it was, there are no words for what that experience was like. Transformative, to say the least. And, I was already dealing with my own addiction because I had gone through so many traumas in early adulthood, like early life. And I just wanted to not feel my feelings. And so I used anything that I could get my hands on, whether it was illicit substances or alcohol or men or love or codependency or, anything like that. I just wanted to use things outside of myself to not feel. And so in the moment of my parents' suicide, there were these two voices in my head. They were very clear. One voice said, "You should stop using drugs. They just killed your parents." And then the other voice was much more convincing, much more charismatic, and said, "Well, you can't stop using drugs. It's all that you have left of them. What kind of person would you be if you let go of the legacy of your family? You are your parents' child, and you have to do what they did." And so that voice just made more sense to me, and it seemed easier. And so I followed that voice. And so my addiction became my parent. Addiction took my parents from me, and then it stepped in as the role of my parent. My addiction was my guiding star, my compass. I'm even covered in tattoos of liquor bottles and packs of cigarettes. Like, this truly was my whole identity. It branded itself onto me. And my addiction, man, yeah, it just grew and grew and got more insane and more insane. And, that the dis-ease of addiction is progressive in nature. And that's exactly what happened to me. I had a boyfriend who, he loved me so much. And I was so immersed in my addiction that I couldn't even see that this person cared about me. And my addiction came before every relationship. I've been married and divorced a couple times. I abandoned my sister and moved across the country after our parents died because my addiction was just more important. And I couldn't be confronted with anything that might be more important than my addiction. And I had this boyfriend, and my boyfriend ended up passing away from using. We were using together. He didn't even like using drugs. He just really liked me, and he ended up having he died of a cocaine overdose. His heart exploded, and I felt so guilty. And I mean, just the guilt and shame that went along with all of that was so overwhelming for me. He was an only child, and I saw the pain and I felt the pain in his parents. And, I didn't feel worthy of life. And so then I really got super destructive with myself, and I was using just to die. And I would use insane amounts of substances, and I would make this bargain with the universe or whoever I thought I was talking to as an atheist. And I said, if I wake up, I'll go get help. Or if I don't die from this, I'll start fresh tomorrow, and I promise I won't use. And I just kept it felt like I was like this fish out of water, and I was just like gasping for air. And then my addiction took over again, as it does, as it kept doing. And I ended up overdosing, and I died. Well, I mean, some part of me died anyway, but I did have this really profound spiritual experience where I entered the space of eternity in this non-physical realm, enveloped in unconditional love and blinding white light, the same space that near-death experiencers describe. And I don't think that I actually physically died, but I did have all of the same markers as a person who had a near-death experience. I have some language for what happened to me today. What I experienced was a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And if you don't know what Kundalini energy is, that's okay. Neither did I. But the word Kundalini roughly translates into life force. So I had a life force energy activation awakening. In the Western world, we might call it receiving the Holy Spirit. Same concept, just different languages from different cultures. So I had this experience where all of my chakras, by the way, I didn't know what a chakra was then, but everything opened and activated and became online all at the exact same moment. So I had this rush of energy going up and down my body. And as my third eye and my crown opened, it was like my spirit shot out of my body and went into the space of eternity. And I had a lot of experiences in this spiritual awakening. And, the main ones that I think are really important to share about is the first scene that I found myself in was, it looked a lot like a spaceship. That's the way it came to me in my mind's eye. And I was surrounded by thousands of other light bodies. I could perceive other souls all around me. And there was a commander in the center of this space. And you can call that commander Christ or Krishna, Buddha, whatever higher entity resonates for you. It all came to me as if it was the same being, but definitely something higher and something pure. And this commander was gearing all of us up for our trip to Earth. And I was downloaded with the information that I am a spiritual warrior sent on a mission to be part of the Great Awakening, that the collective consciousness of the planet is transforming from a lower dimensional of thinking to a higher dimensional level of thinking, and that I was here for it. And all of these souls are all super pumped, and like you could feel everybody all lit up and ready for this jump to Earth. And then my awareness kind of moves to another scene, and I find myself in front of a table of beings. And this is the way it looks in my mind's eye. And this table of beings, I have a large book. and they're thumbing through the book and they're like, okay, it's good to see you. You're not meant to stay. You're just here for some information and then you'll be going back. And I'm looking all around me and I'm like, oh, you guys aren't talking to me, are you? Because I don't know where I am, but it feels really groovy here. And I'm definitely not going back to the mess of feeling that I just came from.
Okay, I want to
Yeah,
stop you with a
go
question
ahead.
because I'm thinking you're having this incredible transformational spiritual experience. How is that vibration feeling to you? It must have been overwhelming coming from where your energy body had been.
Yeah. So, in my spiritual experience, I was kind of treating the whole thing as some drug induced hallucination. I was like, whoa, this is so weird. But I will say that the shift in feeling from going from a deep ocean of anguish into complete embodying unconditional love. I mean, you almost can't even remember the anguish because you're so encapsulated in the love that none of that lower vibrational feeling even makes sense because you're so high frequency. I didn't really understand what was going on at first. Like as I started settled into the experience, I started to get more and more information coming into my awareness. So I didn't know where I was, but I knew that it felt much better than where I just was. And then it started to come back to me where I was. And I realized, oh, I'm home. Where I just was is not home. That's vacation, quote unquote, which it definitely didn't feel like any sort of vacation that a human would think was like a holiday somewhere. I knew that I was actually finally home. And that the table of beings that I was in front of, they didn't tell me who they were, but I didn't even need to ask because I knew that they were people in charge of my mission. And so I just had to sort of listen to what they were saying. And they kept affirming to me that I was not there to stay. And I found myself transforming into a small child, kicking my hands and my feet on the ground. I will not go back. You cannot make me go back. I am staying home. I said to them, you guys don't tell us what Earth is actually like. You don't prepare us at all. And there's absolutely no way that I will return there. And, they kind of had this air of like laughter about them. And they were like, okay, you're here for some information. Let us give you the information that you came here for. We're going to take you through the details of your pre-birth plan so that you understand your mission and that you get on to the next part of it. So they took me through the way that it appeared in my mind's eye was a grocery store. It looked a lot like a video game. And that could be because of the generation that I'm born in or because of the fact that we're living in a simulation, whichever, you could take your pick. So I'm going through this grocery store with this big empty grocery cart, and lining the walls of the grocery store aisles are these gigantic cereal boxes. And every cereal box has a life experience on it. And so I knew that I was coming to Earth for the Great Awakening and that I was going to have to choose very dense experiences because I wasn't just transmuting it for the family line that I was being born in, but I was also going to be transmuting that energy for the collective itself. And so I start grabbing every cereal box. I mean, crazy things, addiction, prostitution, homelessness, degradation, poverty, picking the family line that I would be born into, all of the traumas that went along with that, all the generational traumas that went along with that family line. And then there were also things in the cart that I hadn't gotten to yet in my life, like spiritual awakening, recovery, coming into awareness, being an author, being a speaker, being part of spiritual community. But not, like I said, none of those things had happened. So they didn't resonate for me. And I just thought, oh, that's lovely cart filler. Those boxes look quite nice. Every time that I picked a cereal box, if it was something that involved a contract with another soul, I would pick the box and then a little orb of light would come out behind it. And we would come orb to orb with each other and we would come into contract. So the one that sticks out very vividly for me and the one that I think has been the most transformational in my journey was that when I picked the life experience of childhood sexual trauma, the orb of light that came out with it was the man that molested me as a small child, his soul. And we came into contract with each other to experience this with each other. And they showed us the reasons why. And one of the main reasons was that I had been his abuser in this same capacity in a previous life. And we were balancing the energy for each other on top of the fact that we were doing this for the collective itself. Now, my human cannot understand how a life experience like that could be better for the evolvement of consciousness or the evolvement of my spirit or anything like that. But today I have unwavering faith, belief, and knowing that my spirit, my higher self, my soul has got this all taken care of, and that I'm just here for the ride. And so I was able to break out of my victim mentality in the moment of this particular download in the awakening, that I am not a victim to my circumstance. Things have not happened to me my whole life. They have actually happened for me, because on some soul level, I'm a divine co-creator. I'm creating with the divine for the whole evolvement of my own soul's spiritual self, for the collective's spiritual well-being. It was such a beautiful moment because it felt like 2 tons of bondage had been released from me. Like I had been carrying around these bags of bricks my whole life, and now all of a sudden I was free from all of them. And I found myself back in front of the table of beings, and I was so grateful, and I was expressing so much gratitude, and I was so happy to be in this awareness. And I told them, I'm still not going back to Earth, but you guys are awesome for letting me know all of this. Like, I feel so much better now that I know. And they said, listen, this is not a punishment. You're not going back to Earth because you're condemned there or we're making you. You're going back to Earth because you signed up for something. This is the most exciting time to be on the planet. It's the evolvement of consciousness. People have been waiting millennia for this, and you're here for it. So, get ready, you're going back. And I said, oh, well, I definitely can't go back into the body that I just came from. I said, she's glitched. She needs way too much healing. There's no way to accomplish that. And they said, okay, you don't have to go back into her, but you will be going back. And so we'll show you the baby that you'll be born into. And so they showed me this little baby, again, much like a video game. They showed me her avatar, all of her stats, everything about her ethnicity, her gender, where she would be born, her family line, who her parents were, her purpose, her mission, her adversity. And this baby was going to take on my own life experience cart. And then because of the family line that she was being born into, she was going to have some extra levels of societal adversity against her. And so she had some of her own boxes in the cart. And I thought, whoa, if these are my only options, going back into the body that I just came from or starting from zero, then I guess I'll just go back into her. As I started to sift back into my awareness, they were very loud and clear. And they said, listen, the first part of your life was like boot camp. And the second part of your life will be carrying out the mission. You're going to have teachers and mentors, soulmates, kindred spirits, communities. You're going to have spiritual awareness working for you in this part of your life. It's going to be so much easier. Just trust us. And I remember looking back and saying, I do not trust you guys. And then I found myself back in my awareness. And that's my spiritual experience.
It's extraordinary. It truly is. So you were at home alone when this happened?
Yes, I woke up on my bathroom floor when I came back into my awareness. I was there by myself.
Mm-hmm. And what were those first few moments like? Did you even remember what had happened?
I definitely knew what had happened. And again, I just wrote the whole thing off as drug-induced psychosis. I thought, whoa, I definitely took way too much and I'll never be that messed up ever again. And then I went on Instagram Live to tell everybody what had just happened to me. And it didn't make any sense what I was saying, but I was just trying to get all the information out. I still have the video. It's insane.
I would imagine. So you've woken up in the bathroom, you've had this amazing experience. And I do think that there is kind of an ironic conundrum between what our spirit thinks is a great experience and what we think as humans is a great experience. So you're on the bathroom floor, you're kind of starting to integrate it. What were the next few days and weeks like? I imagine that different parts and pieces of this would come into your consciousness in a big way. And then how did you work with that?
The next few weeks were complete chaos, total chaos. Again, I was a militant atheist, I had a lot of terrible experiences happen to me in my life. And not only that, but I had caused mountains and mountains of harm to other people. I'm not just a traumatized person. I'm a traumatized person who traumatized other people. And so, the whole idea of God or the divine, a creator, was nothing in my radar because I didn't want to have to accept responsibility for the way that I was living my life. I didn't even want to think of somebody having to take responsibility for the things that had happened to me. The only thing that I knew about God, or the thing that really stuck out for me, was, as far as suicide goes, my parents had committed suicide. And so I thought, there's this line in the Bible that says if you commit suicide, you go to this place called the pit. And I thought, I can't imagine my parents suffering their whole human lives and then being damned to suffer for all of eternity as well. And so for me, it was easier just to stay hidden from God. And then after this spiritual experience, it became pretty clear to me that maybe there is something more than just myself and whatever I think this little spark of mistake earth is. But I just didn't know how to live any other way. I didn't even know how to start to rethink all of my thoughts. And then the universe, like God, the divine, whatever language you like to use, I call my higher power source, stepped in this really loud, tangible way to let me know that my experience was real. It was not some drug-induced hallucination. Like all of these divine signs and synchronicities started happening. For instance, all of my drug dealers, they all simultaneously decided to change their lives and stop selling drugs. I'm talking about like 10 different men on the exact same day. I'd call up each of them and they'd each have this story of transforming their lives. And these guys didn't know each other. So, now I had no way to get what I needed. And I found myself in withdrawal, and I had physical dependencies to certain substances, as well as a million mental addictions to other substances. But I did have a physical dependency to opiates and heroin. And I was so sick, so sick. I was on day 3 of withdrawal, which is the worst day. And it feels like your skin is made of broken glass, like your bones are on fire, hot and cold sweats, sick out of both ends. I was welcoming death. And I think that I did have some sort of moment of mental or spiritual suicide where I really felt my parents. I knew the pain that they must have been experiencing when they made this life-changing decision. And I wasn't thinking about anybody else. I didn't remember that I had family or that anybody cared about me or that life is worth living. None of those thoughts came to me. All I thought was, oh my goodness, I am in so much pain. I just want the pain to stop. And I was going to do whatever I had to do to make that happen. And then I heard a voice and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I was in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay, strange voice, I'll bite. Please relieve me of this physical pain. Please relieve me of this withdrawal. And then they told me to lay back and to count backwards from 10. And these 2 little men appeared in my mind's eye. And I could still see them very clearly every time I tell the story. And they were these little men. They had bulbous noses. They were wearing these white lab coats. And these little lawnmowers manifested in front of them. And I watched these men go through every crevice of my mind. And as they walked through, I felt these intense hot tingles. And I just knew that something miraculous was happening to me. And after they were finished mapping out my mind, I felt these X's go across my forehead. And then in this big, bright white flash, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal. I mean, like moments before, I was sick all over myself, welcoming death. And then there I was, completely well and healed and fine. And I threw myself on the ground and I was crying out to the divine. And I kept saying, how could this be happening? I don't believe in this. I don't believe in you. You could not have picked a more unworthy subject to bestow this kind of grace on. And just for the contrast, I was an atheist. I was an orphan to suicide. I was a drug addict. I was a prostitute. I was a liar, a manipulator, a thief. I was a racist. I was a rapist. I was all of the things that you would think would condemn you to the exact opposite of what I was experiencing. And there I was, completely unconditionally loved and saved by grace. Yeah, my whole life changed in that moment. Yeah, at first I thought that I had to go out and heal people with my hands because I had been given some kind of gift. And so
Right.
I went out on the New York City subway system and I was like laying hands on homeless drug addicts, thinking that I had the power to save them. I myself was also a homeless drug addict. So it was just really chaotic and super insane. And then as the dust started to settle, I realized that I had to start living a new life. And a big part of that was going to be going into recovery from drug addiction. Because even though I had been healed out of withdrawal, I most certainly was not healed out of the thoughts that come along with addiction and
Yeah.
all the manifestations of addiction. And so then my journey really started to unfold into recovery and spiritual awakening.
And I think that what you were leading into then was tremendously difficult. And I think a lot of people who maybe were raised in very loving homes or what we would call normal homes don't understand that when you are raised in a completely dysfunctional environment, that's how you think people act because that's all you know. When you go out into the world and start getting these negative reactions to behavior that you think is normal, it doesn't make any sense. So, my guess is that it was did you feel like you were floating completely disconnected, trying to figure out how to form this new life that you had absolutely no background in?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, the whole idea of starting a new life was so overwhelming because I didn't even know where to start. I didn't
Mhm.
even know how to wake up and brush. At the time, I only had like a couple good teeth. Thank goodness for recovery allowing me to buy some teeth in my life today. But, I was really messed up. I had really, really put myself through it. My addiction really just destroyed me. And so, I often say, like, I didn't even know how to wake up and brush my one good tooth without being high first. I didn't know how to do anything without lying, using, manipulating, stealing. I had no idea how to live my life guided by spiritual principles. So, I found myself through some more signs and synchronicities in a 12-step fellowship. I belong to Narcotics Anonymous. And yeah, this man, he just appeared I was in an empty train car, completely empty, which is insane in New York City to be in an empty train car. There's 8 million people that live here. And the train car is completely empty. The doors open and a man steps in and he sits directly across from me in a whole empty train car. And he had a 12-step fellowship necklace on. He had these big blinged out letters of my 12-step fellowship around his neck. And I heard this voice and it said, "That's your path. Follow him to a meeting." And that was the day that I stopped
Oh,
using drugs.
I just got goosebumps.
It was and I've never seen that man again, which is the craziest part because, even though I live in New York City, it's still a relatively intimate fellowship and I've never seen him again. And I really just think that he was an angel incarnate, maybe only just for that moment. And he doesn't actually exist on earth anymore. He was the first time that I started to follow my intuition and realize that I could live my life a different way.
So, for those who are watching who are maybe struggling with drugs or alcohol or any kind of addiction, I mean, we have so many to choose from here on this reality system. Can you talk about what those first days and weeks were like and how it started to change you bit by bit?
Wow, that's such a great question. Thank you for that. Yeah, the first couple of weeks and days of recovery were painful. There's like no other way to put it. It was not, even though I had experienced all of this divinity leading me into recovery, when I was face to face with the fact that I had to unlearn and relearn everything, it was so mounting. And so, one of the greatest spiritual tools that I have is this premise of just for today. I'm just not using drugs just for today. I'm not recovered. I am in the process of recovery forever. I will be. So every day I just take it day by day. How do I not use today? And, it's not just drugs. Like when I let go of drugs, that was just one layer of it. And then all of these other layers of addiction popped up, like eating disorders, person obsession, binge watching TV, codependency, technology addiction. There's so many other layers to my addiction. And it all comes down to the fact that I don't want to feel my feelings. I think that they're too big for me. And before I had established a very intimate relationship with a higher power in my life, with Source, it was like, well, I can't trust anybody to help me with this. But today I have a friendship with my higher power. Today I have this beautifully intimate relationship. And it's just like any relationship, it takes time. And we've had our ups and downs, and we've had no communication and lots of communication. And, it's this beautiful journey of ebbing and flowing and waves crashing and still waters. And it's been a really amazing journey. But but early recovery, if I didn't have the support of other people, like I went into a long-term treatment facility. I went into a 9 to 12 month program, and I ended up staying there for 17 months. And I was really lucky to be locked inside of four walls, because if I had to deal with the tidal waves of emotions and information that was coming to me, I don't think that I could have resisted like medicating and sedating myself with alcohol or drugs. So for me, that was definitely a huge part of it, was that I needed to be around community, other people who were also interested in recovery.
So you go into a treatment program, which, if I were you, I would not be doing interviews. I'd be saying, let's do 3 or 4 years in Hawaii on the beach, toes in the sand, and then maybe I'll come back and be a spiritual warrior in this thing. You just jumped right in it. So you're in a long-term recovery program, which I think was so beneficial, I would imagine. Trying to integrate all this new information and deal with the world, there you had a little bit of a safety net. What does your spiritual practice look like now? And I think that a lot of people perceive a spiritual practice as it just automatically comes. It doesn't. It doesn't. So how do you keep it together today?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Yeah, spiritual practices are just like anything else. So the muscle of my spirituality, of my spiritual practice, it's just like going to the gym for my physical body. I have to do exercise every day in order to see different results. And it's the same thing with a spiritual practice. So now I don't sit on a pillow for an hour a day and meditate and like zen out or anything. That's not where I'm at in my spiritual process. So I do have a meditation practice, but it involves physically moving my body. So I meditate while exercising my body. I also practice this beautiful book right here, A Course in Miracles, just a little bit of light reading. Just kidding. It's like an 1,800-page manifesto. So inside A Course in Miracles, there's a workbook and there's a lesson for each day of the year. And it is a reprogramming. And A Course in Miracles is a metaphysical text, and it's channeled by Jesus. And it's channeled through the mind of an atheist psychotherapist from Columbia University in the 1970s. And for me, this is the closest text that I've found that explains my spiritual experience to me in this really tangible way. Now, this book reads like stereo instructions. It's very challenging to understand. It's definitely not written by a human. So I go to a Course in Miracles study group, and I have a beautiful community where we read the book together and we interpret and we share. So a big part of my spiritual practice is also being involved in spiritual community. Like I said, I belong to 12-step community. That's something that I do on a daily basis. I have my Course in Miracles community. I also study the Baha'i faith, which is another one of the scriptures that I found that resonate very deeply with my own spiritual experience. And if you're unfamiliar with what that is, Baha'i is the world's youngest religion, and it believes in all manifestations of God. It believes in the oneness of religion, the oneness of humanity. And it also combines the conceptions of science and spirituality. And I have a beautiful Baha'i community. It's the most diverse, welcoming, kindest group of individuals that I've ever come across, like in my human experience. So I am very called to that scripture. I love their writings so much. And I'm not a Baha'i. You don't have to be a Baha'i to get into the faith, which is one of my also favorite parts of it, is that it's very diverse. And I also belong to a group for near-death experiencers and spiritual experiencers with the International Association for Near-Death Studies. The acronym is IONS. And we have sharing groups every week. And so that's where I found all of the language and integration tools for my own experience, was inside of these different spiritual communities. So it's a really big part of my spiritual journey and my integration, my practice, is to find my tribe and to be with my soul family. And so I have done that, and I continue to allow that conception to grow. There's more members of the tribe out there. I welcome them into my experience. And I love creating conscious space. And these are all the ways that I exercise my spiritual muscles. And then every day I exercise a spiritual principle in my life, whether it's honesty, compassion, empathy, tolerance. Every day I make a conscious effort to exercise at least one of those spiritual principles throughout the chaos of the day.
You know, when I am out in the world and I see someone who is clearly struggling, drug addiction, homelessness, I look at them and think that could be quite the powerhouse tomorrow, because I have seen people come from really, really tough stuff that informs them in their transformation, and they just become this incredible spiritual powerhouse because of the depth of that experience. What do you think it was with you? Because I believe that we all map out our lives. We have a general plan before we incarnated. What gave you the confidence to bite off so much in this incarnation?
Wow, that is a great question. Honestly, I have contemplated whether or not this was an informed decision on almost a daily basis, especially right after the awakening. I knew that I had planned my life that much. I mean, you can adopt it as a belief if you're not sure. I have a deep knowing that I did plan my life. And books like Michael Newton's Journey of Souls and Robert Schwartz's Your Life's Plan, your soul's plan, those books gave me confirmation that my spiritual experience, I did not make it up. Like there's literature out there that has to do with pre-birth planning. And so again, I'm not sure if it was an informed decision, because I don't think that my soul understands the density, number one, of Earth. And I'm sure that it does because it's had other lives here. So when it goes back, it's just like, that was cool. Let's do it again. My human is like, how could you do this to me? Like, this is way too much for anybody to take on. But my life experiences might not seem as bad as other life experiences. Now, yes, I've experienced a lot of dense experience, but I also live in America, and I'm surrounded by certain lifestyles. And if I lived in a country that didn't have running water, or people were starving to death, that's a life experience that's also very challenging. Now, mine has different density to it, but there's lots of, and maybe it's not that challenging for somebody who's experiencing that. And so it's all about these lenses of perception. So I know that my soul is like this script writer who knows no bounds. My soul is creating this Spanish novella playing out in real time in my life. But I also have, like I said, just unwavering faith that everything is always working out for not only my highest good, but for the collective's highest good, as long as I stay on this journey and continue to do the inner work. So I spend a lot of my time conceptualizing and theorizing and thinking and learning. And I never used my brain before. I mean, the extent of my vocabulary before my spiritual experience was just this long laundry list of drugs that I used and how much money it cost to be with me. I had no space or no need for any other thoughts. And today I have this whole universe of thoughts inside of me, and that's incredible. Yeah, I guess to answer your question, I really think that my soul signed up not just for me, but for the whole collective. That's something that keeps me on the healing journey as well. Because I think sometimes if I thought I was just doing it for myself, I might just give up and say like, this is just one person, doesn't really matter. But when I think about that, I'm healing for every little girl who never got an opportunity to get past or process their sexual trauma, or every child who lost a parent to suicide that never got an opportunity to process that trauma before they left a form. I know that I'm doing this for the greater good. It's not just for me, and that's something that keeps me steadfast in this process.
Mhm. And I know I've said to my guides over and over again, you guys don't realize what it's like down here. It's harder than you think. And I know that as we are formulating our lives, we think it sounds exciting. When you get here, it's just like really, really tough. Sometimes it's like slugging through mud to get to where we're going. So you've had this incredible experience. It's just mind-blowing what you've gone through, and the light and the energy and the enthusiasm that you exude today. It's really miraculous. It's a miracle. How do you see the world today in contrast to how you saw it prior to this experience?
That is such a great question. So my life before was as if I was walking around in hell. And then I started to come into spiritual awareness. And then I thought, okay, I'm in purgatory. I'm stuck here and I don't want to be here. And now today I see my life as heaven. And that's been the spiritual shift for me. And I'm so grateful for the shift in perception. And like I shared, spiritual community has been a big part of that. So after the spiritual experience, I just thought that I had died and that I had to do recovery to get back to heaven. And so I would get to these milestones of not using, and I'd say, okay, God, I haven't used drugs in 7 days. Is somebody coming to get me? What's going on? And no response. And then a month would go by. Okay, it's been 30 days. I'm still doing it. Who's coming? Thinking that some spaceship was going to come beam me back up to home. And the further and further that I got on the spiritual journey, and the more spiritual texts that I read, and the more that I educated myself, and I found the teachers that really resonate for me and the mentors in my life, I realized that it's not about going back to heaven. It's about bringing heaven here.
Yeah.
And I get to do that every day that I stay in recovery. It really is like heaven. I went from being a homeless meth head prostitute strung out on heroin to a happy, healthy individual surrounded by community, living a life full of abundance in a beautiful home with beautiful friends. I mean, yeah, if transformation is possible for me, it's literally possible for anybody. I mean, there's just no words for me to explain to you what kind of depraved animal I was before this experience. And I hold that vision for every person that I, maybe like don't like in the moment.
So you've alluded to we're in this transition period here on Earth, which I agree with. Can you talk to us a little bit based on your experience and with this expanded knowledge that you picked up, the expanded experience? Where are we going and how? Give us some tips and tricks on how you think we can best navigate the changes on the planet.
Wow. Yeah. So I can't claim truth for everybody. And that's the coolest part about my spiritual integration process. First, I thought that I had to go out and teach and preach and proselytize, and everybody needed to know what I know, and they have to do things the way that I do them. And again, through spiritual integration and through being surrounded by spiritual community, I've realized that everybody has spiritual autonomy. Just because this is what works for my path doesn't mean that it will work for your path, but these are the things that I do. So I believe, or I have this deep knowing that we are in the midst of the Great Awakening. We are transforming from a level of third dimensional thinking to fifth dimensional thinking. And what those words mean is that we're going from an ego-centered thought system to a spirit-centered thought system. Or you can call it service-centered if you don't like the word spirit, or God-centered if you want to hear like a more biblical word. But we are transforming from a level of self-centeredness to God-centeredness. And so for me, I do a couple of things. Number one, I'm of service to people every day. And I don't ever feel like I have to be of service. I get to be of service. I get to be of service in whatever way that is. Now, sometimes it's something big, like sharing my testimony or intimately connecting with you right now. And sometimes it's just something as small as holding a door open for another person or smiling at a stranger on the street. Those are all acts of service. So I'm always of service to other people. I treat my body like it's a temple, and I drink lots of water. I drink like a gallon of water a day. I spend my whole day peeing. It's very annoying, but I know that it's good for me. It raises my vibration. And again, this might not be everybody's truth, but this is what works for me. I drink lots of water. I exercise and move my body. I eat clean. And yeah, like just by changing those couple of things around, I feel better. And it's challenging. It's very challenging to eat clean. It's very expensive and there's so much temptation out there. But I know that every time I make a decision, the decision that I, especially with food, like whatever food I put into my body, that's information from my body. I'm telling my body, hey, I love you and I honor you, and I'm going to feed you good, nutritious, live things. And so that's a big part of it for me. And I think being grounded and finding whatever grounds you into the human experience. Like, yes, we're spiritual beings, but we are here to have a human experience, even if that involves the transformation of consciousness. So for me, I have to stay grounded in my human as well. And so, I have like my partner. My partner doesn't have the same belief system as me. And so he really grounds me in my human experience. Because like it's not just about talking about all things spiritual all day long. I have my spiritual communities for that. And then I have a very human relationship with a man in my life. Yeah. So for me, eating clean, exercising, drinking water, doing acts of service for other people, and being involved in not only spiritual community, but doing very human things as well. All of those things make me feel very grounded that I am able to be here for that transformation, for that shift in thought.
Yeah. I don't know if most people realize we have the e-ticket ride right now. We are boots on the ground in one of the biggest events in the galaxy right now. Everybody's watching us. It's
Absolutely.
exciting.
It is
Yeah.
exciting.
And I do think that, or at least I have noticed in my personal life, there may be a different story being told on social media and on the television. I don't watch television, but perhaps my perception is that people are getting kinder. They're longing for that connection. It's becoming, people are more awake now. They're doing things intentionally. There is just a shift in humanity, and I can feel it. And what you said about opening doors or just being a small, what we would consider on a human level as a small gesture is not, it's huge. And that energy pattern that you created by doing that exists forever and expands. So it's all those little things that we can choose to do on a daily basis that we are literally transforming this reality and system into something kinder, more gentle, more unity centered than self centered, less fear, less lack, just a complete shift in perception on what we can create here on earth.
Wow, I love that. Yes, yes, yes.
So what's ahead for you? Where's your energy flowing next? What gets you excited? What do you bounce down to bed about? What are you creating in your world?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I host a podcast with the International
Mhm.
Association of Near-Death Studies, and that is really something that I'm super passionate about. I also have a coaching business where I mentor people through letting go of addictions or spiritual awakening or any area of their life that they're looking to transform. I've been able to utilize the law of attraction and the law of assumption in my life in such an extreme way to just call in high vibrational experiences for myself, for lack of a better word, but optimal timeline experiences. I no longer have to stay in the muck and the mire that was my experience before. Now I can rise above it. And so I assist other people. If I have that ability, I know anybody does. Like every living conscious being does. And I also work, I have a day job. I work at a clinic in Harlem, New York, and I assist people in their recovery journey there as well. And I'm really, all of the things that I do are acts of service, creating conscious space, whether I'm coaching somebody in my private business, or whether I'm at work during the day. I have acts of service, and so for me that really lights me up. I'm also writing a book, and I really want to utilize some of the tools that I've been able to find in my life and kind of put them all in one spot. Maybe not for other people to read, maybe just for myself to remember if I have to. So those are the things that really light me up. That's what I have a lot of excitement for moving forward.
Wonderful. And where can we find you on the web?
Yeah, so I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. My handle is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. And I would love to connect, especially if you're somebody who's
Mhm.
experiencing a struggle with the dark night of the soul or addiction. I've found so many amazing resources. And if I can't help you in an intimate way, I can at least connect you to community. We came here with tribes of other souls, and we're meant to reconnect with them to go on to the next leg of the journey. And so if I can act as a conduit to get you into your tribe, I would love to do that.
You are such a testament to the resilience of humanity and the power and strength of humanity, and connecting with our purpose and our mission is such a rewarding thing. And you are just a poster child for that. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll come back sometime in the future.
Thanks so much, Kimberly. Grateful
All
for you.
right. All right, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Coming up next, this is a good one, or you might really like this one too. Either one of them could be perfect for you. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe.